Dorianne Weil on 101.9 IFM.
And this is indeed Dorianne Weil. I'm Dr. D, and welcome to On the Couch with me on High FM 101.9. And guess what we're talking about tonight? You know what? I don't know anyone, and I think that these days I would like to say that includes men, because we only used to talk about the subject not that long ago in relation to women, because it was kind of endorsed and allowed and accepted that women have not really only a touch of vanity, but that really were defined to an extent and concerned about their appearances and about their looks. We've often said that when you're not feeling that you're looking good or that you're looking your best, the whole of you feels terrible. Women often talk about wanting to have periods of hiding away or kind of going underground, or they have bad hair days, they have fat days, they have looking ugly days, certainly more often than men do. But today, with an emphasis on health and on vitality, and indeed on youth that we're going to be talking about, men might not admit it, and I think they often don't, but they also are most concerned about their physical appearances, not only as perhaps you think they should, and maybe you have a judgment about it, which we can talk about, and I do want you to join us on the show, and I'll give you the numbers now, but not only from a health point of view, but also from an aesthetic point of view and from a looks point of view, also feeling, gee, I want to look good, I want to look my best. You know, I look in the mirror and I see, who's that old man looking back at me? What's my dad doing, staring out at me today? Where did I go? And sometimes they will discuss this. Sometimes they talk about it. Sometimes it's just a level of acceptance. But one thing we do know is that how you look affects how you feel. Rightly or wrongly, it certainly does affect how you feel. And let's face it, come alive. You in the Pepsi generation. Everyone knows that the most wonderful and important part of your life is when you're that young, fancy-free teenager, you know, with earplugs in your ears, listening to the music that you do, jeans kind of ripped at the knees as if by accident, and all the marketing and all the media and everything seems so geared to the younger generation. The special deals for the first-time home owners and all the kind of sense of fun and fulfillment seems to be addressed and marketed to the youth. Of course, those of us of a certain age, and I'm not saying what age particularly, do know better. We know that there's contentment, there's fulfillment, there's fun, there's a sense of satisfaction, there's deepening and permanence of relationships. There are things that are much less sort of transcendent than youth. We know that there's something about grace plus intelligence rather than maybe a God-given gift. But nevertheless, people are concerned about their appearance and it affects how they feel. So we decided tonight that we're going to talk about this quest for youth, some of the ways that people are pursuing to feel good about themselves and to look younger for that reason. We want to know whether people do go over the top with this and they have false expectations about what it might mean to look younger. We want to know how realistic those expectations are, and when they do have certain procedures, does that indeed affect how they feel about themselves? And does it influence the way they behave? And does it influence their relationships? And so tonight what we're talking about is this kind of youth-orientated society, quest for youth, the procedures that are available that maybe you knew nothing about, and I'm sure you're going to be most interested in, and whether they work. And at times, as I say, do we tend to have false expectations and go over the top. And I am so delighted to welcome to our studio someone who spends her life, or certainly your working life, being involved in this every day, a cosmetic doctor, Dr Maureen Allem, who is certainly a very renowned, well-known medical doctor, and decided to change your direction after a while. I know that your early work as a medical doctor was involved in running a medical ward at one of the hospitals, and then you became very interested in what you're doing now, have pursued it internationally and nationally, become almost synonymous with the development of certain procedures, and now you have 10 clinics that are specifically dedicated to certain non-surgical procedures. And so we invited you in today, Maureen, to talk about your experiences of the procedures, which people are certainly going to be interested in, but also your vast experience through the relationships that you have developed with your patients and the results of having these certain procedures on their lives. So welcome to you, to Chai FM.
For having me.
Welcome. First of all, just about your own self and I'm sitting across here, and I'm sorry for once, not sorry for me today, because I am not dressed for television. But if you could see Dr. Allem, I would say that without having read your CV, quite honestly, your face, as I'm looking at it, certainly does not look. I mean, in your CV it says you look 45. You look nothing like 45 to me. I would say you look 35. Not
I'm
even.
actually 52.
And you are 52. It's quite
52.
amazing that you are. She has a skin that glows like a mirror. You can almost see your reflection in this porcelain skin. And I'm looking for something that looks false, Maureen, that looks stretched, that looks like you've had numerous surgical facelifts, that has got that kind of giveaway look, with an extra kind of taunt eyes or mouth. I can see none of that when I look at you. And guys, I'm being absolutely honest. And I'm interested in exploring. We will go into the psychological side, but maybe how do you do it? How on earth do you do it?
Look, I started about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, my sisters all frown very badly, and my daughter's been frowning badly since the age of 3. And when I read about this Botox in about 1998, 1999, it seemed quite interesting, because at that stage, our ex-Prime Minister's wife, the President's wife, Dr. de Klerk, his wife Marika had a very bad frown. So there's a lot of controversy about her frown. She seemed very angry, and she was desperate to get rid of this frown. And then I read about Botox. So I put it off for a year or two, and eventually I took myself off to one of the plastic surgeons who was just starting off with this Botox, and myself and 3 of my sisters and a friend all went for the Botox. And then I experienced, and I thought, this is not so bad. I've done many more complicated procedures in the hospital. How difficult can this be? And then I tried to research the Botox, but I couldn't even find Botox in my MIMS. That's how new it was. And eventually, about 2 weeks later, I got a dermatological journal, and in this journal there was Botox was advertised by the firm that brings it in. So I contacted them, and then so my date with Botox became my destiny. It was quite amazing.
So you actually got into it through your own personal experience, which of
absolutely.
course,
when I saw what it did to my face and to my sisters' faces, and it was quite amazing. That whole refreshed look that it gave you took that anxious, cross look away. And the way that it lifted the brow and made was just quite amazing. And I realized, and at that stage, the anti-aging industry was in its infancy, because Botox started this whole industry, because before it was surgery or nothing.
So I want to ask you about Mrs. de Klerk, who I actually personally knew quite well.
Really?
In fact, I can tell you that I was the last person to interview her before she died. And we did an amazing, quite an in-depth show about forgiveness. And she was quite an incredible woman. So we'll be back, looking at how it affects your looks from the physical point of view, but then also how it affects how your self-esteem on the inside. Stay with us.
This is On the Couch with Dorianne Weil on 101.9 IFM.
So you might be wondering why a show called On the Couch with Dorianne Weil or Dr. D is actually talking to a cosmetic doctor about Botox. Actually, we are, it is a broad show. The show is about you. The show is about your life. The show is about the things that you might be interested in and that affect you. And certainly we would like you to participate in your show. And you can do so on this show right here and now by phoning 0861 242436, 0861 242436. You have a specialist cosmetic doctor with you right here in the studio to answer all your questions. And I know that you do have questions about all of the new modern procedures, Botox, which has been around for a little while, and everything else that we're going to talk about. I'm also interested in the way that it affects how you feel, starting with, by the way, you can also SMS 37420 and join us in our conversation. So from your early experience, which was quite a number of years ago, you and your sisters, you say you had this treatment with Botox. It was instant, and you felt refreshed. It lifted your brow. Somehow there was no knife involved.
Absolutely.
With that. And what did it do to you? How did you feel? Because you went into it for a reason.
Look, I never really had that very bad frown. My sisters had that frown. And I could see on them how it just, look, they're quite self-confident, women. So it didn't make a huge difference to their lives, but it definitely made them, less anxious looking, just going by my sisters. But for my patients, I was asking a few of my patients today because I knew I was going to be speaking about the psychological aspects, and I said to them, why do you do Botox? The one was a 35-year-old, and she said, I do it because I don't want to age like my mother, unfortunately. So she's looked at her mother and she's seen how her mother's aging, and now she wants to do something because the youth and the 30-year-olds don't want to age like their parents have aged. Much as we love our mothers, if there's something out there to help us to age slightly differently, and we're also working for much longer times, and we're living for longer. The whole age lifespan has increased.
The whole lifeline has changed.
Absolutely.
I mean, what used to be considered middle-aged is considered a sprightly young thing now, says she sitting behind the microphone. But it's true, middle age isn't what it used to be. Actually, there's some very interesting statistics, and they're American statistics, but I guess that they apply quite well to large parts of our population, and for women, and that is that I read that if you haven't suffered from cancer or heart disease as a woman by the time you're 52, which is interesting of what the age that you are, then you are almost guaranteed to live well into your 80s, past 80s, so that actually you have a whole adult life still in front of you. I mean, at least we're talking about, say, 30 more years.
Absolutely.
Which is very, very different to what it used to be. So let's go back to your patient who said that she doesn't want to age like her mother. The one thing is the looks aspect, okay? She looks at her mom and she sees her mom, whatever age her mom is, as looking old. To her, her mom looks like perhaps an older woman. What happened to, maybe there are many people out there who look at their mom and who, she, as you mentioned, she loves her mother. That's got no thing. She looks at her mom and this perhaps softened face, and she sees these lines of years of experience, and she looks at her mom with this deep love, and she sees her mom as an older, contented, happy woman, and the idea of thinking, gee, I'd like to maybe be like that one day, is that gone?
Not completely gone, but like when you look into look into the mirror and see this age face, you're constantly reminding yourself of your mortality. So if you see a younger face, you're not so, not obsessed, but worried about actually getting older and and having to pass on. Maybe that's one of the reasons.
So you think that it's certainly that the idea of living longer, why don't you look better? And that
if you can, why not? Like aging is not a disease, but like if you've got diabetes, you certainly go treat it. You don't just leave it.